All right, Doug, good morning. Today, I'd like to talk about where someone might go to sort of escape the insanity that's happening in the world. It's not just in the United States. It seems to be a global phenomenon. So you're the international man. You've been everywhere. Where can someone go today? What are you thinking?
Yeah, well, this is a real problem because actually the entire world is going in the same direction and it is absolutely the wrong direction. And one indication of that is this global COVID hysteria. All of these stupid governments are working in unison to use it as an excuse to lock down their populations. About the sole exception is Sweden, and Sweden is doing the right thing, and nobody even talks about it. So, but I don't particularly want to go to Sweden because these Scandinavian countries have other problems. I mean,
Mhm.
so where do you go today if you're an American? And it's absolutely shameful that Americans have to actually think about leaving America because America has always been actually the last best place where freedom reigns, where freedom and individual liberty and the other characteristics of Western civilization were part of the culture. So, of course, if you had any sense, you'd prefer to go to America of any other country.
Mhm.
But that's changing. And if it turns out that Harris and Biden, and I put it in that order because it's going to be a Harris regency until Biden steps down, and then we get our homegrown version of Eva Peron. What a
Exactly.
disaster. I mean, we really are looking at a civil war or a secession. I really think so. But that's a different subject. The question
So
is,
yeah, one of
yeah,
the challenges though is that you can't even travel to very many places right now. I mean, it's not as at the moment it's not as bad as it was, but borders are locked down everywhere.
exactly, which is all the more reason, incidentally, which is something I've said for many years, get yourself a second citizenship or a third, and at least get residence in different countries so that you can go there if you decide to go. I'm not saying the US is going to be Russia in 1917 or France in 1989 or China or all these other countries that have had disastrous shits that lasted for many years. But so where do you go? Well, if you're in the US and you don't have a lot in the way of assets, you should move to a small town in a so-called red state.
Mhm.
Wyoming, South Dakota, places like that, okay? But if you're if you're in a position financially, and you should be, shame on you if you're not, to have a crib outside the country, what country to go to? Well, the first and most obvious one is Canada. But how stupid are the Canadians that they elected, the young
Trudeau.
Trudeau? I mean, talk about a cuck. I mean, he's, but hey, Canadians elected him. And,
Yep.
and probably the freest province in Canada was Alberta. But Alberta's put in all kinds of new taxes and has a left-wing government. So you can't rely on the intelligence of your fellow Canada's going the wrong direction. Best hope I have for Canada is it breaks up. But okay, Canada.
Well, and we also did see some pretty strong crackdowns in Quebec, for instance. Remember a couple months ago we talked about those.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, they were actually they were it was like New York City almost in Quebec City. So
yeah. Well, the best thing that could happen to Quebec, both for the Quebecois and for the rest of Canada, is it separates from the rest of Canada. That's a simple solution.
yep.
Uh, let's hope it happens. Okay, Canada, okay, at least it's a different country, okay, gives you some flexibility. It's easy. You can become a Canadian citizen in 3 years, I think, and they make it pretty easy. Okay, well, another thing, Mexico. Mexico is actually quite interesting. It's
Mhm.
a big country, it's actually peaceful, and it's cheap, and it's mellow most places. Forget about the fact that, 20 or 30,000 people are murdered every year. But stay away from the
Yeah.
drug guys. You
Yeah.
know.
Well, and there's certain towns where it's more prevalent and you have to be more careful. But the other thing about Mexico that's interesting is that they never, in most countries, close their borders to American citizens, but Mexico never did through this so far.
Yeah, so I think Mexico is underrated, quite frankly. It's something worth thinking about. And then going down the map, we have Central America. Uh, all these countries in Mexico, Central America, the land of the Frito Bandito. I'm pretty familiar with Central America. I've been to every country there a number of times. Guatemala, no. Honduras, no. But those offshore islands are a different story. So you can't even generalize about Honduras.
Mhm.
Costa Rica, lots of gringos there. It's expensive. It's not what it used to be. I don't know. My choice would be Panama in Central America, hands down. It's Panama City is very sophisticated,
Like
high standard
Miami.
of living. You got
Yeah.
beaches on the Atlantic and the Pacific. You got mountains if that's what you like. English is widely spoken because it's got a good economic future because of that canal and other things. So put Panama on the list.
Panama did have incredibly strict COVID lockdown restrictions.
Uh,
Extremely strict, yeah. Where they were only letting you could only go out of the house 2 days per week, I think, and it was based upon alphabetical order. You could not go out of the house with another member of your household at the same time, so you couldn't go out with your wife, to go grocery shopping. I mean, it's very strange. Some of our mutual friends were there and expected to ride this all out there, and they got a private plane and got out.
yeah, yeah. Well, look, talk about a disease that's going viral. It's stupidity. Like
Hmm.
Einstein said, it's after hydrogen. It's the most common thing in the universe. So anyway, forgetting about that. I think Panama is okay. Of course, it's a country that the U.S. feels free to invade at any time, as they proved with Noriega.
Exactly.
Yeah. So okay, then south of Panama, and of course the U.S. is responsible for the creation of Panama. They stole it from Colombia. I don't know. It seems like the guerrillas are getting fired up again in Colombia. But I think Colombia. A lot of people love Medellin,
Hmm.
so Colombia is interesting. Venezuela, not interesting. Used to be the richest country in South America. Now I don't know when it'll get better, but because it has oil, it's probably always going to be a problem because that oil that's like a one-stop shopping if you want to steal stuff, which is what the politicians all do. So forget about that. The Guyanas, they're a different world. I've been to all of them a number of times. Probably not so weird, but interesting. Brazil. I think Brazil would be my number one choice. I mean, look, we were talking about Chile the other day. I
Hmm.
mean, highest standard of living, best economy, best technology, all because of Pinochet, who's treated as a master criminal, uh, which is a separate discussion that we could
It
have
is.
about
Yep.
that. But now, hey, it was too good. We can't have nice. This is why we can't have nice stuff, is what the Chileans said.
Exactly.
So we're going to destroy it all and reelect a communist. So I don't know about Chile.
Yeah, I really thought Chile would be the one. I really did years ago. I thought because they had the largest percentage of the population was middle class, it was really developed. I thought it'd just be middle class means stability. I thought, but boy, I've been proven wrong about that. What's happened there in the last
Yeah,
year?
beautiful California South and not a big population. I mean, what,
Yeah.
10 or 12 million people? Oh, well, it's all cyclical.
But Brazil, though, you were saying, so what is so Brazil is also another place that did not close their borders to American citizens during this whole time period.
Yeah, Brazil is quite interesting. Southern Brazil, like, south of Sao Paulo. There, it's, you know, people don't understand that Brazil has actually got serious racial problems. Not, it's different. than it is other places. But still, it exists. But southern Brazil is very European. Those problems aren't as serious. You go to northern Brazil, and they're all black people. No problems with that, except it's a different environment. It's a different culture. Make your choices. But and you can become a Brazilian citizen fairly easily. Have a kid in Brazil, you're Brazilian yourself in a year.
Yeah, they
So
have the same anchor baby program we have in the US.
exactly, except you can become a citizen in a year, not 5 years for the US. So put Brazil on your list. I'd forget about Bolivia, Ecuador, and Peru. Why? Because they're all Indian country. And, the Indians were conquered by the Spanish. And still, 500 years later, for good reasons, they're pissed off about it and they want to retake it. But they're all following the Morales, that moron that ran Bolivia. Same with the other countries. Those three countries are problematical.
Well, and Peru has had two, they have had two presidents in the last week, I think, right?
Anyway, there's not much that's attractive in Peru, frankly. I mean, you've got the jungle and the mountains. The weather generally sucks. I see Lima as a horrible city.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'd forget about Peru, and the same with Ecuador and absolutely Bolivia. Argentina and Uruguay, similar but very different. Argentina's, run by a criminally insane couple at this point. They're totally bankrupt again. I'm not sure what they're going to do. Probably something stupid. They always do. Too bad. I really like that country. Uruguay, very expensive, but it's only 3.5 million people. Socialist welfare state, but they leave you alone. Okay, so where are you going to go in South America? Answer the question. Brazil, and I'd say right now, Uruguay. But if you want to buy land or buy a house or buy anything in Argentina, it's like things are free. So if you want to look ahead and say, hey, something good will happen, now's the time to put money in Argentina because they'll give away stuff. So here's a crisis investing opportunity.
Yeah, if you can get in there, they won't let anyone right now. You can't even, it's hard to get in the country.
Yeah, that's right. It'll open up. It'll open up eventually. It has to. But if you can get in, when you can get in, beautiful place, look for real estate. It's like free. So, okay, those are your choices in South America. Next, Europe. I like Portugal because it's way out on the end. But the disadvantage with Portugal is maybe I have an engram about Portuguese. You think it's like Spanish. It doesn't sound like it at all. The language can be a problem. And will they be inundated by migrants from Mozambique and Angola who do speak the language and want to get to Europe? This is one of the big long-term problems with Europe, is that if I was a young African, the first thing I would do at any cost is get to Europe for every reason you can think of, And they will. And they're not going to be able to be stopped, especially since all the Europeans are so, they're such limp social justice warrior socialists. So listen, I wish I could place a money bet that I'd be around to collect on, that 30 years from now, there's going to be 50 million Africans in Europe. We'll see. Sounds like an outrageous prediction, but it's going to happen. So I used to think that the Chinese were going to take over Europe and use it as a petting zoo. But actually, the Africans will. Actually, since China is taking over Africa, maybe we'll get both. But the Europeans are absolutely screwed. It's too bad.
One of the big challenges, I think, is this, it just seems like, it's like, what are you trying to, where you go, a lot of it is depending on what you're trying to achieve. And it used to be that I think what the main priorities that people had were, more, better lifestyle, better cost of living, better weather, better, more interesting culture, whatever. But now it's like trying to escape. I think the major motivation is trying to escape this hysteria that's going on, and all the Thanksgiving rules and all the craziness. And I think, in Europe, it's hard to imagine that the European Union in general loves rules. It's hard to imagine that the rules, are not as restrictive all over the continent as they would be here.
Yeah, I agree. It's no, Europe is a sinking ship. Although in Europe, I like Portugal with the problems. I think Poland is
Mhm.
actually one of the more interesting places in Europe. I like Poland. I mean,
Yeah.
it's pleasant. They've kind of drawn the line on doing incredibly stupid things. And I kind of like the Baltics too. They're kind of isolated, low taxes, encouraging entrepreneurialism. So I'd say if you want to go to Europe, look at Poland and the Baltics.
Yeah, I think you're right. I agree with that. Yeah. Hmm.
So,
Where are you going to go?
hmm,
Where are you going personally?
well, I've got a big footprint in Uruguay and Argentina both. So that's the way I'm playing it at the moment. Uh, I'm not thinking so much about Europe. Yeah, I guess I'm in Argentina and Uruguay, mostly Uruguay, for the foreseeable future.
And you're in the U.S. at the moment, and you're pretty eager to get back, as you were
I'm
telling me.
eager to get back. I'm eager to get out of the US before Biden's in office. And who knows how they'll lock this place down, or God knows. But yeah, I'm very anxious to get back to Uruguay. And it's quite mellow down there.
Do you think that travel is going to open up the way that it was in 2019 ever
I
again?
don't. I don't. I mean, we've talked about whether this is some type of a grand conspiracy or not. And as we've talked about, I'm disinclined to believe in conspiracy theories because I find it hard enough to get four friends to decide on what movie and then what restaurant they want to see. So, how do you get a bunch of sociopathic criminals to decide on something? But it seems like that's the case. And I'll bet we have travel passports in addition to your regular passports and all kinds of stuff like that. And of course, since I believe that we're still in the early stages of the Greater Depression, people aren't going to be able to afford, I think the masters of the universe actually don't like having all the hoi polloi traveling around places and filling up St. Mark's Square in Venice and having cruise ships parked in the harbor and stuff like that. That's kind of,
Unsightly.
yeah, exactly. They'd like these people to stay at home, locked down, and you know,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean, I have
I wouldn't be surprised.
to say traveling during the 2008, 2009, and it was wonderful. I mean, there weren't tourists everywhere. You were going to That was my first time I went to Florence, and I got a totally wrong impression of Florence because there was no one there. I'm like, this is an amazing city, and I came back every time I've been back there since then. I'm like, it's just overrun with tourists. So I mean, they kind of have a point.
Yeah, it is a point. I mean, like one time I went to Israel and it was during the second Intifada. It was fantastic. The crowds were gone. I went to Masada, which is usually lines hours long. It's a mob scene. I was there with like a half a dozen other people. It was delightful. It was like being a tourist in the 1930s or something. It must have been. So sure, I can understand their point of view. And of course, Bill Gates says that he'd like to see the world's population reduced to 500 million people. Yeah.
Yep.
So who knows what the hell's going on in these people's minds?
Yeah. Well, we were talking about the idea of a conspiracy theory, and I said, well,
What was the, what was the
just
term?
bad. I called it coordinated strategy. It's clearly a coordinated strategy
That's better, actually. Yeah.
because you have all these people saying the same phrase, build back better, You have Boris in the UK doing it, you got Trudeau saying it, and you got Biden saying it. It's obviously, I mean, there's some coordination.
Yeah. Yeah. Like this phrase, build back better, which people are, the ruling class is using all over the world. So yeah, it's kind of like their code word for, yeah, you're right. So look, there's almost no place you can run to hide at this point, because I'm of the opinion we've lost the battle. I mean, all these chimpanzees like strong leadership. They've been sold on the state as a cornucopia, welfarism, socialism. So frankly, we're in trouble. We're an endangered species, libertarians and freedom lovers. So anyway, going on from Europe, Africa. Uh, Look, I've often said, if I was 30 and wanted to make a fortune, I'd get on a plane to Africa. And if you want to start on the shallow end of the pool, which you probably should, I'd probably start with Namibia and then Botswana. The deep end of the pool is Central Africa and West Africa, like Nigeria. But it's too problematical. It really is. So I don't think it's on the shopping list for most people that are looking for, not really. So forget Africa. Australia and New Zealand, New Zealand, how stupid are they? They, after Roger Douglas reformed the country, when anybody that could afford airfare to Sydney, London, or Los Angeles was getting the hell out of there in the 1980s. Roger Douglas reformed it. It was like in Chile, but no people got killed. Now, of course, they've elected and re-elected a communist woman who's, I think, clinically insane. She's like New Zealand's answer to Kamala Harris. So forget New Zealand, which was looking like a refuge for billionaires for a while. And forget Australia. It's a continent, but still, the tall poppy syndrome in both of those countries, not what they used to be. But then, you can go and China, well, unless you're of Chinese ethnic extraction, you can forget about China. I mean, you're not gonna fit in. I mean, we can live around the edges. Thailand is much better that way. I like Thailand a lot, but still, you're never going to be a Thai. You can forget about it. You can marry a Thai. You can learn to speak. You're never going to be a Thai. Forget about it. So you can forget about the whole Orient from that point of view. But a great place to live. I love the Orient. So what else we got left? We've covered all the bases, haven't we? Except for the Caribbean. You can get a sailboat and sail around. It's not a bad idea.
Yeah, no, I think the hard thing now to me, in my mind, again, is if you expect travel to become more restrained over time, especially if you don't want to get the vaccine and don't want to have to worry about the health passport stuff, then it's important that you spend the next few months probably really thinking deeply about positioning yourself from your portfolio. I think also because of everything that's going on in the world, but also where you are physically and because I think we're running out of time to be able to. We've already lost the ability to freely move around the world.
Yeah, pretty much.
So,
well, I mentioned this story to you about the guy that saw World War II coming. He could see the clouds building on the horizon. And he figured, well, where can I go so I'm not going to get washed away by World War II? So did a logical search on the globe. Says, well, okay, I want a place where I can be self-sustained, want a place on the ocean, so I got options. I'll get a plantation so I can grow stuff and have stuff that I can sell into the market, and I want a good climate, and et cetera, et cetera. So where's he go? Seemed very logical. He picked Guadalcanal. Now, who would have guessed, that there'd be a year-long battle between the Japanese and the Americans? Nobody would have guessed that.
nope.
So So you can run, but you can't hide. And it was a few years ago. There was a woman that came down to Cafajate, and she said, "No, I met you 7 or 8 years ago, and I decided that I wanted to jump into the deep end of the pool." So she went to the Solomon Islands, of which Guadalcanal, there's about 1,000 islands in the Solomons. Guadalcanal is the big one.
Hmm.
And she went there and just cold. And she made herself kind of a leading citizen, set up a hotel, knew everybody in the country and so forth, and got to be buddy buddy with the president and was going to take me down there and introduce me to everybody. Oh, how about the Solomons? Nobody goes there. Nobody thinks about them. The Americans and the Japanese aren't going to fight again. I mean, you go to a weird place like that, nobody cares what happens there. There's a bunch of places like that.
Yeah, yeah, there are. And I think, but the same could somewhat be said of small towns, rural areas in America, right?
Yeah, it's the best you can do. It has its set of inconveniences, of course, when you're in a backward place, either in America or internationally.
Hmm.
So this is a good reason to have a lot of money, because money can solve these problems of inconvenience and make your
Yep.
local environment much more pleasant.
Yep. Money doesn't solve every problem, but it does solve about 95% of them.
And Bill Bonner, our friend, who bought Bill bought, I don't know, 500,000 acres
It's like
roughly.
this, the size of Rhode Island, I think it is, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, it's about the size of Rhode Island he owns in Northwest Argentina. And Bill was writing a piece in his blog the other day, and he's absolutely correct. You'd think, well, owning 500,000 acres and being a rich guy, he should be like a medieval warlord. And he is, except as he points out correctly, you can't deflower the virgins anymore. You can't beat or slay anybody that gives you troubles. Actually, you got all the downside. The peasants come to you with their problems. You got all kinds of responsibility. You got no time anymore. So even if you own a country-sized plot in the middle of nowhere, you still got problems.
Still got problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you solve? I don't know. What are you thinking? Where
Well, I mean, we moved away from the city. So as to kind of give us a little breathing room while we sort of assess what's happening in the world. I just closed on my house yesterday, actually, in the city, which is nice to have that done. Um, but I think I definitely am biased toward. We had a conversation yesterday about this, probably Uruguay and then southern Brazil, like that area between those two countries. You said there's not even a border check between those two countries, so
there's not.
it seems like you get that being in that general area affords you lots of advantages, I think. And it seems like it's out of the way enough that some of the worst consequences that we've talked about, from like a increasing war drums with China or something, and having a non-conventional warfare with China where the electrical grid is attacked or something like that. It just seems like Uruguay's probably not going to be on the radar in an environment like that. It just seems like it.
No,
It
it's
could be.
unlikely to. And there's an area in the border between Argentina, Paraguay, and Brazil. It's called the Triple Frontier, where you can pass between all three countries with no border. Now, technically speaking, if you go more than, and it varies, it's more than like 50 miles or 100 miles into either country, and you're stopped at a police checkpoint, they'll want to see you. But if you stay within that area, I went down there years ago with a friend, and we were looking for the Star Wars bar, which was in, what the hell's the name of that city? Oh, God. It was supposed to be so wild and crazy. And we were looking everywhere for trouble. We couldn't find it. So things change after a while. Everything gets civilized as time goes on. But yeah, there's places like that. But I think you've got to plan ahead now, or you're going to be trapped like a lobster.
Yeah, you'd be trapped. I agree. So definitely now the time to act, it seems, and it doesn't matter if who's president. I don't think. I just think these trends frankly are just moving in this direction. They're global. I don't think travel is going to be the same for a
No,
long time.
no, it's not.
Time. And so,
Yeah, and I guess adding everything up, um, I think that Uruguay or Brazil on the border there, yeah, it's yeah, I think it's the best alternative.
yeah, I think that sounds good. So we have a report, a special report that will be published this week, and we've had people sign up for this already. I'm going to put a link for this in the description so people can, if you're interested in getting this, we'll email it to you as soon as it's ready. But essentially, we talk about Doug's big predictions for 2020s, for the 2020s, a decade, and what to do about it. And especially, it's slanted toward investment and gold stocks in particular, but if you're interested in that report, go there and fill out that form, and we'll send it to you as soon as it's available.
Yeah, what happens if we come up with some more predictions?
Well, I think we got to build it out to 10. I think there's definitely a few that we left out already, so I think we'll add to it over time.
Yeah, yeah, we will. And,
Well, in the meantime, so people, please go ahead and sign up for that report if you're interested, and then also definitely I would plan now to make sure that you're positioned where you're on the best place for you and your family based upon what your resources are and what your capabilities are. But I think now's the time.
yeah, we pretty much covered the waterfront here in the last half hour. There's no ideal solution, unfortunately, because that's just the nature of this planet.
Yeah.
Um,
There are things you can do to give yourself buffer between between tide and you and your livelihood. Like there are things that you can do, I think, put buffer between you and all the craziness that's happening, even if it's being being in Florida, which the governor said we are not going to do another lockdown. We're not going to do it, is what he said. And while a lot of other states are, so maybe even that will be better.
it's better to be in Florida than California. I mean, California, for whatever reason, has elected criminally insane governors for decades now. Doesn't seem that trend is going to change. It might even accelerate in the wrong direction.
Sure seems that way. Sure seems that way. I know, Doug, you have to get to another call, so we'll just wrap this up here and let you get going. So thanks for your time today. We'll talk tomorrow.
Okay, thanks, Matt.